Hi, it's Sandy Wyllie. Welcome to my mental health channel, where I wipe away the stigma of mental illness by talking about my own personal struggles having borderline personality disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. I talk about schizophrenia. I wrote a book about my life with my dad who had schizophrenia, and this video is going to be all about that. Today, talk about narcissism, my unethical psychologist who I've had sex with, who took advantage of me, and a plethora of other mental health related topics. But I only come on as a former patient of almost 20 years. I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't hold a degree in psychology, so I cannot diagnose you or give you a professional opinion. All I ask in turn of you is your kindness and respect, please, in the comments. Now, if you're new to my channel, welcome. Hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified every time a new video comes on. It's 100% free. Stick around, take a chance, give it a thumbs up. Share it with your friends and your family on your social media platforms. I'd love for you to share my videos. Let's spread the word. Let's build this community. I want to hear from you. I want to know your opinions, and your personal struggles are very important to me. This video is debunking the myth of schizophrenia. A lot of people have, the wrong ideas of what schizophrenia is. And this whole book here, Life with My Schizophrenic Father, I wrote a book. On the back, I tell you why I wanted to write this book. I wanted to write this book so people could understand more about mental illness and its effects on people. I also wanted to write it in special memory of my father so that I could share with the world the close relationship I had with him. In this book, I talk about my own struggles as a borderline, along with my eldest son's struggles. This is Alex right here. So you can see that's him. That's my son who has traumatic brain injury from meningitis. Along with my eldest son's struggles from brain damage, which he contracted through meningitis when he was only 4 years old. Oops, I think that book is falling down. Okay. Through it all, the one thing that remained is love. So, first of all, I didn't know anything about schizophrenia growing up. I didn't even know my father was schizophrenic. I didn't even know I was borderline until I was like 40 years old. That's how old I was when I knew exactly what my diagnosis was and what my father's diagnosis was and what my mother's diagnosis was. My mother is a narcissist personality disorder. I have borderline personality disorder, and my father is a paranoid schizophrenic. Now, I thought schizophrenia was having multiple personalities. This is wrong. This is not true. That's dissociative identity disorder, DID. Dissociative identity disorder is when a person has multiple personalities, okay? Somehow I thought that's what schizophrenia was. I never even knew what schizophrenia was because my mother would never tell me. Anytime my father went into hallucinations, my mother would say, he's not right. He's talking ragtime. What does that mean? What's ragtime mean to a 3 or 4 year old girl, a little girl? And even growing up as a teenager, he's not right. That doesn't explain anything. With my son, I sit down and explain to my son I have borderline personality disorder. I talk about what that means and how, it makes me extremely sensitive to what other people say and do, and I am very impulsive, and I go into the details, but this is not that video. This video is on schizophrenia. So I didn't know anything. I just thought something's wrong with my dad. My dad left me for years with my mom. My dad was institutionalized because he heard voices, which is true. That's not a myth. When you have schizophrenia, you can hear auditory voices in your head telling you things, and you can't control them. It's not like a TV where you have a remote or a radio where, you know, you can shut it off or turn it down. You cannot turn it down. My father had a name for these voices, Shadrach and Dredrew. I don't know what those names meant. Maybe if you know, if you're from a different country and those names mean a different something in that country, I have no idea. But that's what he told me, Shadrach and Dredrew. Let me know if you know in the comments, please, because I'm almost 60 and I don't know. I don't even know how to spell them to look it up, okay? So let me debunk some of the myths about schizophrenia. I'm reading a great book now called Everything's Fine. And in this book, this brother is writing about his brother who was part of triplets. He had 3 siblings, okay? 3 of them were triplets. He was the firstborn, and then his mother had a miscarriage of twins, and then she went on to have triplets. And one of the sons, named Chris, was schizophrenic. And the sad part about this book is he had a psychotic episode and went on to kill his mother, their mother, which is very sad. Now, growing up, my father never hurt me at all. He was not violent. This is how I know my dad growing up. I've heard other stories that he was violent. I'm not going to talk about that today because, you know, I lived with him. Well, I lived with him for 22 years. He did leave home for a few years, so he wasn't living with us then, but he did return. And then, you know, I interacted with him constantly. My mother didn't want to listen to me. My father was the only one who listened to me. My father was the only one who had patience. On their medication, schizophrenia can act like normal, everyday people. All right? So I want to debunk that myth that this can't be brought under control with proper medication. It can. People can live out normal lives with medication. The problem with my dad is he would not take the medication. This is like a catch-22 with my dad. My dad would take the medication and say, I feel fine, you know, because you're on medication. That's why you feel fine. I don't need to take this medication. The medication would make him it would have bad side effects, okay? So it would make him fall asleep at 7 o'clock. He'd feel like in a daze, you know, all day long. He wouldn't feel, you know, he'd feel like in a, he'd live his life like in a cloud on the medication. And he didn't like that feeling of like living in a fog. So it dampened, that's what it does. It dampens all those voices in his head. It dampens so bad, but then you're living your life like, you know, you're in a fog, and he didn't like that. So when he went off the medication, he always felt better for a short time, but then the voices would come back, and then he would need to be hospitalized. So see, it's kind of like a catch-22 with it. You have to know how to monitor it, have the right dosage, but with the proper medication, okay, and therapy, a person that has schizophrenia can live out a somewhat normal life. So I want to debunk that myth that they can't do that. I also want to debunk the myth that, you know, they're violent, vicious killers that, you know, need to be locked up in institutions. A lot of people have a psychotic breaks, okay, that aren't schizophrenic. Many borderline patients, borderline personality disorders have psychotic breaks. Many people who don't have borderline personality or schizophrenia or, you know, any diagnosed can go in, anything diagnosed can go into a psychotic break. Anyone can go into a psychotic break, all right, if the circumstances are just right, if the person is just burnt out. It can happen even to people that don't have mental health problems, okay? Just to let you know. So I want to debunk that myth that schizophrenia always means violent people that need to be locked up in prisons or mental institutions. This is wrong. Anyone can have a psychotic break. You don't have to have, you know, a mental health issue to have one. You can just be burnt out. You can be overwhelmed by something. Anything can happen, okay? My dad was never violent to me. My mom, that's another case. Go look at those videos and you'll learn about my mom, okay? My dad never laid a hand on me, never raised his voice to me. So he was very calm. Except when he got psychotic, when he was off his medication, but it was never directed at me. It was directed at other people, never at me, okay? So I was scared because, you know, he was like a different person, you know? That's why I thought it was multiple personality disorder, you know? I was confused and thinking my dad had multiple personalities because I was like, well, this is my dad on the medication. A very calm and, you know, he had a good sense of humor. Everyone liked him. He was well liked. And this is my dad off the medication, like a lunatic who I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was enraged. He was cursing everyone, saying everyone's out to get him. He had no trust. And so that's why I thought it was multiple personality, but it wasn't multiple personality, okay? It was just my dad needing that medication to, you know, calm those voices in his head. But my dad was the most loving, the most quiet. My mother was a loud mouth, okay? My mother was the one who had a truck driver mouth. My mother was the one who screamed and shouted every day, who, you know, physically abused me and verbally and, you know, and mentally, you know, tormented me. Not my dad, all right? So people with schizophrenia can be one of the kindest and lovingest people around. My dad wasn't demonstrative with affection, okay? Meaning he didn't hug me and tell me he loved me. I don't know why, and it probably has nothing to do with the schizophrenia either. I think it was because he grew up in a house. What happened with my dad? It's all in this book that I wrote. You got to read this book. My dad's mother married a man who already had several children. Okay, he had Rosie, Helen, Edie, Connie, Philly, at least 5 other children before he had my dad. His wife, I don't know what happened to her because my family never told me anything. His wife was institutionalized. She had a mental breakdown and was institutionalized. And he had these 5 children. And he had no one. I think there's 5 children. Oh, Mary. I forgot Mary. Oh, goodness gracious me. I'm forgetting. I'm so sorry. I got a picture of the whole family. Here we are. This is at my wedding. Okay? That's at my wedding. There's pictures in this book. Okay, yeah. All right. So, Philly, Rosie, okay, Edith, Mary, Connie. Yeah. Is that 5? 1, 2, 3. Oh, 4, 5, 6. Helen died before my wedding. Helen. It was Helen, too. So there's 6 siblings. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with my dad's family. But this was my father's father, okay, my grandfather having all these kids. And his wife was institutionalized. And he needed someone to take care, you know, help him out with 6 kids. So he met my grandmother, my father's mother. She was very young. And she had a child out of wedlock, and they took the child away from her. When she was 15, she was a pregnant teenager. In those days, you never even say anything like that. That's a disgrace. They took the child, and I don't know what happened to the child. My father's sibling, I don't know what happened. So then my father's father, my grandfather, married his second wife, which was my grandmother, and they had my father. Their only child, okay, together was my father. And he was raised in this house with all these other siblings. half siblings. You got to read the book, please. Because I can't explain it. And I think that, you know, he was like the black sheep of the family. They hated him, the siblings, because of his mother, you know, that she was the other woman and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, so my father grew up like that, in that kind of environment where he wasn't wanted. And, you know, it was very hard. So he probably, you know, you kind of like, you're a product of your upbringing, you know. So if you weren't raised with a lot of affection or anything like that, then you're going to kind of, you know, you're not, how are you going to give something that you never had? See, that's the thing. So, I mean, my father would never, if I wanted to hug him or like that, he would never turn me away. He wasn't like that. It's just he wasn't demonstrative. You know, he didn't demonstrate to me affection like other fathers, like my husband does with my sons. They're always hugging and kissing and cuddling and very, very affectionate, but I never grew up with any affection. But it wasn't because my father wasn't loving. Okay, my father was loving in a lot of ways. He listened to me morning, noon, and night. You gotta read some of the weird, funny stories in here that he did. It's not a long book. I think it's just a little over 100 pages. It's a very short memoir. It's a very short memoir of my life with my dad, and I wrote it around Father's Day too. I forget what year. This was a while ago, many years ago. It wasn't recent. Okay. So don't think that schizophrenia, have multiple personality disorders. That's something else. Don't think that they're violent and murderers, and they're gonna, you know, they're not all of them like that. Many of them function normally if they're on the proper medication with therapy. They can have a close to normal life. You can have someone in your family who's schizophrenia. It doesn't mean that they're suicidal. Not all my father was not suicidal. Just like me having borderline personality disorder, I'm not suicidal. Now, many people who have borderline personality disorders are suicidal. They also are cutters. They self-harm. They cut themselves. I don't have that symptom. Okay, just because you have a condition doesn't mean you meet all the criteria or you have every single one of the symptoms listed. I think you have to have like 7 or 8 of the 10 symptoms or something to be classified as borderline personality disorder. You don't have to have every single one of them. And same with schizophrenia. And my father, I never knew my father to be suicidal, okay? I never knew my father to, you know, strike out at me or be violent or anything like that. When he was on his medication, he was very loving. He was very patient. He had more patience than when I knew when he was on his medication. I didn't have patience. My mother certainly didn't have any patience. So he was very patient. He was very kind. We had a good relationship when he was on his medication. He used to tell me war stories when he was in the Korean War. He was a military policeman in the Korean War. And a lot of funny stories he told me about that period of his life. And it was cute. It was kind of like my buddy, actually, you know, like a friend. So, yeah, I just want to debunk some of these myths that go around that people with schizophrenia, oh, don't go near that person, they're dirty, they're homeless. A lot of schizophrenics are homeless and out on the streets. This is true, but that's not the whole truth. Not all schizophrenia, people with schizophrenia are homeless or out on the streets or bums or alcoholics, you know. That's not true, okay? My father held a job. He worked, all right? He was a purchasing agent. He made purchases for companies, and he was a shipper. He shipped packages. I mean, it wasn't like a, you know, high-class lawyer, doctor job. But he still worked. So schizophrenics can have homes. He came from a beautiful home, you know, a nice home, a roof over his head. He worked full-time. You know, he was a decent father when he was on the medication. So I just want to debunk this. You know, if a lot of people wouldn't even know when he was on his medication anything wrong with him. You know, you'd say, oh, he's schizophrenic, and they say, you know, he's acting perfectly normal. So I was very close to him, and I'm very grateful that I got to spend time. It's very short, unfortunately, because I was only 38 when he died. But, you know, I have a lot of good things to say about him. And I just wanted to, you know, debunk some of the myths of schizophrenia, because I don't want people to have the wrong ideas about it or to be afraid of people like that. You know, not all of them are like these, you know, like the ones I'm reading about in the book. Everything is fine. This person had schizophrenia. He was suicidal, and he did kill his mother. All right? That's in this book I'm reading. But I want to get the message out that not all schizophrenia, people with schizophrenia are like that, you know. They're not. My father was one of them that was not like that. Just like all borderlines aren't suicidal, they don't cut themselves. I don't self-harm. I mean, maybe I drinks too much once in a while, but I don't self-harm. If you do, you know, I'm not putting anyone down. I'm just trying to educate people that not everyone meets all the criteria, okay? I'm not saying there's something wrong with you if you know, are like that. I'm just saying that I just want people to be educated and know that not every schizophrenic or every borderline is suicidal or dangerous or harms people or harms themselves. This is not true. Or can't live a somewhat normal life on medication and be close to, you know, and be close to people. My father was very loving, okay? So I hope that, you know, I'd love to hear your comments. I hope that explained a little bit. You know, I only have, you know, so much time for these videos. I can't talk an hour. No one watches to the end of my videos anyway. They only watch like 2 or 3 minutes, actually. So I'm going talking and talking, and no one's even listening to me. So in hopes that you did get to the end of this video, drop me some comments. Let me know if you're schizophrenic, if you know anyone who has schizophrenia. I'd love to hear that. And let's keep the dialogue open. All right. Take care.